You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis or nursing documentation, there's this expectation of like absolute airtight precision.
Right. Yeah. It feels like engineering.
Exactly. I mean, you measure a patient's heart rate, and it is exactly 82 beats per minute. Or you look at an X-ray, and that jagged white fracture line is either there on the screen or it isn't.
Yeah. The numbers are clean. They give you a sense of solid ground. Healthcare really relies on that illusion of the binary.
It totally does.
Yeah.
But then you step away from the monitors
Yeah.
and the lab values, and you look at the actual written notes.
Oh, the narrative charting.
Yeah, the charting done by nurses and doctors at like 2 in the morning. And suddenly that beautiful precision gets incredibly murky,
Very quickly.
specifically when we hit the punctuation. Because one tiny curved line hovering in the air can completely alter the legal and clinical reality of a patient's record. So today, we are taking you on a deep dive into the world of apostrophes and possessives.
It's a surprisingly dramatic topic, honestly.
It really is. We're pulling straight from TEAS and HESI nursing entrance exam prep materials. And our mission today is to completely conquer this mark. We're going to figure out how to correctly show ownership, untangle the traps that exam writers actively set for you, and, understand why mastering this tiny, frustrating punctuation mark is a massive deal.
Right, because it's not just for passing an exam.
No, it's for your future clinical accuracy.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we ask you to just memorize a list of grammar rules, I feel like we have to understand how the apostrophe even got its job. I always just assumed it was, I don't know, fundamental law of English grammar.
Right, like it was handed down from on high to show ownership.
Exactly. Invented specifically to show that someone owns something.
Yeah, but the historical record shows the exact opposite, actually. The apostrophe wasn't originally meant to show ownership at all.
Wait, really?
Not at all. If we trace its origins, it entered English print culture in the 16th century, and it was essentially, well, a borrowed tool. English printers took it from French printers, who had actually adapted it from Italian Renaissance scholars.
Okay, Italian Renaissance scholars, what were they using it for?
They were meticulously working with ancient Greek texts. We can trace an early definitive use to an Italian printer named Pietro Bembo.
Pietro Bembo.
Yeah, in 1501, he used the mark in an edition of Dante's poetry. And you have to remember the context of early printing presses, right? Setting type by hand was physically laborious.
Oh, sure, placing every single letter.
Exactly. And paper was incredibly expensive. So English printers saw Bembo's little hovering comma, and they just adopted it as a purely mechanical convenience. It was an omission marker.
An omission marker, meaning it was solely used to signal to the reader, like, hey, I chopped a few letters out of this word to save space.
Precisely that. If a printer needed to fit a line of text onto a physical page, or, if a poet wanted to preserve the rhythm of a line, they would just drop letters.
Oh, like writing the other instead of the other.
Right, with an apostrophe right in the middle. It was just a space-saving hack, nothing more.
Okay, that makes sense for poetry and printing press constraints. But how on earth did a space-saving hack transform into the universal mandatory symbol for ownership?
Well, that is where the history gets a bit chaotic. In Old and Middle English, long before the printing press, the language just functioned differently. If you wanted to show that a noun possessed something, you didn't use punctuation. You used a suffix.
A suffix, like at the end of the word.
Right. It was a holdover from Germanic case endings.
Okay, let's pause there for a second, because Germanic case endings sounds like the kind of phrase that makes people's eyes just totally glaze over.
Fair enough, fair enough. Think of a case ending like a physical color-coded tag attached to the end of a word.
Okay, a tag.
That tag instantly tells the listener what job the word is doing in the sentence. Is it the subject, the object, or in our case, the owner? In Old English, the tag used to show ownership was often the letters ES.
So if I wanted to talk about a crown belonging to a king, I wouldn't write kings with an apostrophe. I would write kings
Yes, K-I-N-G-S.
as a completely separate syllable. The king is crown.
Yes, exactly. But as centuries passed, the language naturally simplified. By the 1600s, people simply stopped pronouncing that unstressed E when they spoke. They were just saying kings.
So the written word didn't match the spoken word anymore.
Right. Printers and grammarians faced a dilemma. The written word kings looked weird if you weren't saying the E. So they decided to insert their handy new omission marker, the apostrophe, right where that silent E used to be.
I mean, it's almost like a software bug that accidentally became a permanent feature.
That is exactly what it is.
They were just trying to flag a silent vowel for the reader, and somehow, over generations, people forgot about the silent vowel and started believing the apostrophe itself was the magical symbol of ownership. Wait, so the main reason we use apostrophes for possession today is essentially based on a 400-year-old typo and a bad theory.
What's fascinating here is how later generations actively tried to rationalize this accident. Because they forgot about the Old English ES tag, they invented a completely fake history to explain the apostrophe. The sources call this the his genitive myth.
Yeah, I saw that in the notes and I was so confused. What exactly is the his genitive myth?
So, in the 18th century, certain prominent grammarians looked at a phrase like the king's crown. They couldn't explain the apostrophe, so they decided, incorrectly mind you, that it must be a contraction of the phrase the king his crown.
The king his crown. That sounds incredibly clunky to a modern ear. Why would anyone believe that was the origin?
It sounds clunky now, but at the time it felt like a historically plausible folk etymology. I mean, Old English actually did use possessive pronouns in some parallel or repetitive constructions. So these grammarians theorized that the apostrophe was just standing in for the letters H and I in the word his.
But we know that's not true.
Oh, we know for an absolute fact today, thanks to philologists, scholars who study the historical evolution of languages, that this theory is completely 100% false. The possessive apostrophes descends directly from that Old English es suffix. It has nothing to do with dropping the word his.
But despite being totally wrong, this fake theory basically went viral and became the law of the land, right?
It did, largely because of one wildly influential man named Lindley Murray. In 1795, he published a book simply titled English Grammar.
And I'm guessing it was popular.
It became the best-selling grammar text for the next century. It essentially standardized schoolroom English across both America and Britain. Murray took the apostrophe for possession rule, baked the false justification into it, and taught it as an absolute settled convention.
Even though people knew it was wrong.
Even though serious linguistic scholars at the time knew his reasoning was flawed, yeah, the textbook was just too popular. The rule was locked in.
Okay, so the foundation of what you are being tested on for your nursing entrance exam is essentially based on a 400-year-old typesetting hack, retrofitted with a completely false origin story by a guy in 1795.
Pretty much.
That is wild. But because this punctuation mark was so awkwardly grafted onto the concept of possession, it spawned highly specific, sometimes agonizingly rigid rules. So let's pivot. Let's take this messy history and translate it into the core mechanics you actually need to know for the TEAS and HESI.
Right. At the foundation, exam writers are really testing your ability to distinguish between 4 specific ownership scenarios. The baseline scenario is singular possession.
Just one owner.
Exactly. If you are dealing with one single owner, you add an apostrophe followed by an S. It doesn't matter what the word is.
So if I'm a nurse writing about one patient, it is the patient's blood pressure. PATIENT, apostrophe S.
Yeah.
One nurse. The nurse's stethoscope. Apostrophe S. That feels clean enough. But wait, what if that single person's name naturally ends in the letter S? Like, what if my patient's name is Charles? Do I add another S and make it Charles's? Or just leave the apostrophe hanging off the end?
You've just hit on one of the most contentious editorial debates in the English language.
Really? There isn't just one right answer.
No. Professional style guides actually go to war over this. It depends entirely on whose rules you are playing by. The AP style book, which is, the Bible for journalists, cares deeply about saving space and avoiding visual clutter in narrow newspaper columns.
Right, because of column width.
Exactly. They argue that too many S's look messy. So they tell you to drop the extra S and just write Charles with an apostrophe at the end. Charles's chart.
Okay, so the journalists say drop it. Who argues the other side?
The Chicago Manual of Style, which is used in academic and book publishing, they care about logical consistency above all else. They argue that a singular noun is a singular noun, period. You must apply the rule equally. So they demand Charles's chart, CHARLES, apostrophe.
I love that. Visual aesthetics versus algebraic logic. But if you're taking the TEAS or HESI, you don't really care about journalism versus book publishing. You just want to pass. What does the exam want?
Nursing exams generally lean toward the more traditional, algebraically consistent grammar school conventions. So when in doubt on a singular noun on these tests, add the apostrophe S. Treat Charles just like you would treat John or Mary.
Got it. Singular gets the apostrophe S. So what happens when we scale up? Let's say we aren't talking about one patient, but a whole hospital ward full of them. This is the plural possessive.
This is where visual placement becomes everything. If the plural noun already ends in an S, which, covers the vast majority of regular English plurals, you add only the apostrophe at the very end of the word.
So multiple patients who all have charts. I write out the plural word first, PATIENTS, and then I just stick the apostrophe on the outside. The patient's charts.
Exactly. Or the nurse's station. It is one station, but it belongs to multiple nurses. This specific distinction, the singular patients with the apostrophe tucked inside versus the plural patients with the apostrophe hanging on the outside, is heavily featured in reading comprehension passages on these exams.
It's almost like the apostrophe is allergic to too many S's. If the plural word already ends in a giant hissing S, the apostrophe just hangs out safely at the very end. It refuses to add another S to the pile.
I love that. That's a highly effective way to remember it because it perfectly explains what happens with the next scenario. Irregular plurals, words like children, women, men, or people.
Ah, right. Those words mean more than one, but they don't end in the letter S, so they don't trigger the apostrophe's allergy.
Precisely. Because there is no S at the end of children, the apostrophe isn't repelled. It acts exactly like it would for a singular noun. You add the apostrophe and the S. So you write the children's ward or the women's clinic.
That makes total sense. You would never, ever write children's with an S apostrophe because children is already inherently plural.
Exactly. And to round out the core mechanics, we have to look at compound ownership. When multiple people own things, this is a higher level trap on the TEAS.
Okay, lay it on me.
If two people jointly share ownership of a single entity, only the final name in the list takes the apostrophe.
So if my friends Sarah and Tom share one apartment, it is Sarah and Tom's apartment. Just the one apostrophe at the end.
Correct. But if they each own their own separate versions of an item, both names require an apostrophe. Sarah's and Tom's charts. The presence of two apostrophes immediately signals to the reader that two distinct charts exist.
Okay, so if we just stick to ownership, the rules follow a somewhat predictable rhythm. But here's where it gets really interesting. The apostrophe still has a day job from the 1500s.
Right, the omission marker.
It still creates contractions. And the tension between these two jobs showing possession and showing omitted letters creates the biggest danger zones on your exam.
It really does. The tension between possessives and contractions is the single most tested concept. And the undisputed king of these exam traps is the battle between its and its.
I have to speak up for the learner here because I totally get why people mess up its and its. We are literally taught that apostrophe means possession, so naturally a student assumes IT apostrophe S means belonging to it. It feels like the English language is actively trying to trick you.
I completely validate that frustration. It is deeply counterintuitive. But to beat the trap, you have to understand the deeper architecture of the language. Possessive pronouns, words like his, hers, its, ours, theirs, yours, and whose are ancient.
Right.
They existed long before printers started messing around with apostrophes. They already possess ownership in their very DNA. They never needed the apostrophe as a crutch.
Oh, that is a great way to look at it. So adding an apostrophe to a word like hers to show ownership, it's basically like wearing suspenders when you're already wearing a belt. It's totally unnecessary because the word is already doing the job.
Exactly. Possessive pronouns are strict apostrophe-free zones. It's without an apostrophe already means belonging to it. So what is its with an apostrophe? It is only ever a contraction.
Because the apostrophe is doing its original job of replacing missing letters.
Right. So IT apostrophe always means it is or it has, never ownership.
Never.
Never. And because the contraction and the possessive pronouns sound identical to the ear, exam writers deploy them constantly as a homophone trap. They want to see if your eyes can catch what your ears cannot.
The same exact trap applies to your, meaning belonging to you, versus your with an apostrophe, meaning you are. Or like the word whose, W-A, meaning belonging to whom, versus whose, apostrophe S, which is purely a contraction for who is.
Yes. You have to train your brain to expand the contraction. If you see an apostrophe in one of those pronouns on the test, mentally read it as two separate words. If it is or you are doesn't make sense in the sentence, the apostrophe is a trap.
Which brings us to a trap so notorious it actually has a cultural nickname, the greengrocer's apostrophe.
Yes, the classic greengrocer's apostrophe. This error happens when someone uses an apostrophe simply to make a regular word plural. You see it on handwritten signs at markets all the time.
Right, like a sign that says bananas 50 cents, spelled with an apostrophe S.
Exactly.
To put this in clinical terms, using an apostrophe to make a word plural is like a medical misdiagnosis. You are applying a treatment, the apostrophe, where there is no underlying disease, there is no ownership happening, and there are no missing letters. You're just administering an apostrophe for no reason. And the adverse side effect is complete grammatical confusion.
That is a perfect analogy. The writer just wanted to show there was more than one banana, but they applied the wrong intervention. On your exam, if you are tempted to add an apostrophe just because a word ends in S, and there are multiple of them, like writing, the nurses are on break, to mean multiple nurses stop. Apostrophes never simply signal this word is plural.
Never. So we've covered the history, the mechanics, and the traps. But I want to elevate this a bit. Why does a nursing entrance exam care so intensely about this tiny mark? Is it just academic gatekeeping, or are there real-world stakes here?
Oh, the stakes in a clinical environment are immense. Nursing programs test this because punctuation is a highly reliable proxy for your attention to detail.
Which is everything in nursing.
It is everything. In healthcare, a dropped decimal point can result in a fatal medication overdose. A vague phrase in a handoff report can lead to the wrong surgical intervention.
The source material highlighted a fascinating legal scenario about this. Imagine you are charting at the end of a chaotic 12-hour shift. You write a note about the patient's family being highly combative. If you write it with the apostrophe before the S, it means one specific patient and their specific family.
But imagine your hand slips or you just aren't paying attention and you write the patient's family with the apostrophe after the S. Suddenly, grammatically, you have implied that multiple patients share this family or that a larger group was involved.
Which might seem like a harmless typo in the moment.
Yep.
I mean, you know what you meant.
Sure, but nursing charts are permanent legal documents. Fast forward 5 years, there is a malpractice lawsuit or a risk management review. A team of lawyers is putting your midnight charting on a projector screen in a courtroom. That single stray mark creates massive legal ambiguity about how many people were actually present, how you managed the room, and whether your documentation can be trusted at all.
Wow.
It completely misrepresents the clinical reality of that shift.
It is terrifying how much weight that little curve of ink carries. And it isn't just lawyers who scrutinize it. Outside the hospital walls, the cultural anxiety surrounding the apostrophe is shockingly intense. Like, people get furious about this.
Oh, the culture wars over the apostrophe are very real. To understand the depth of this anxiety, you really just have to look at the year 2003. A British writer named Lynn Truss published a book called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves: The Zero-Tolerance Approach to Punctuation.
And I remember this. It was essentially a manifesto against the greengrocer's apostrophe, arguing for strict, unforgiving enforcement of the rules.
And it sold over 3 million copies.
3 million?
It was a runaway international bestseller. 3 million people bought a book complaining about punctuation. It tapped into this deep underlying fear that if we let these small rules slide, the entire foundation of clear communication will just collapse.
That fear was so palpable that people actually formed an alliance, right? The Apostrophe Protection Society.
Yeah. Yes. Founded in 2001 by a retired journalist named John Richards. For nearly 2 decades, this organization campaigned furiously to correct public signage and shame corporations into using the mark correctly.
But they didn't win the war, did they?
They didn't. In 2019, Richards formally disbanded the society. He released a statement essentially conceding defeat, citing that the ignorance and laziness of modern times had won. The emotional toll of constantly fighting the tide of language change was simply too much for them.
Which sounds a bit melodramatic, mourning the death of a punctuation mark. But then you look at what some government institutions are actively doing.
Right. It isn't just public laziness, it is institutional policy. In 2013, Britain's Mid-Devon District Council officially announced they were banning apostrophes on all new official street signs.
Banning them entirely. Why?
They cited the ongoing cost of constantly correcting the signs when vandals or grammar advocates would alter them. And they argued that the marks just caused unnecessary confusion. Over the years, several other UK local councils have attempted similar bans, always triggering a massive public backlash.
So what does this all mean? When local governments are literally banning punctuation to save money, are we watching the slow death of the apostrophe? Or is it a necessary tool for precision?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are watching a live battle between two philosophies of language: the descriptivists and the prescriptivists. Descriptivists are linguists who observe how humans actually communicate. They argue that apostrophe rules are just arbitrary 400-year-old printing conventions. They point out that English speakers managed to communicate brilliantly for centuries without standardized punctuation.
Right, language naturally sheds unnecessary complications over time.
Exactly. If a street sign without an apostrophe still gets you to the right street, the descriptivist says the communication was successful.
But on the other slob, the prescriptivists, like the people who bought 3 million copies of Lynn Truss's book, argue that these rules matter. That correct usage is a vital marker of care, literacy, and precision.
And this is the ultimate takeaway for you, the nursing student listening right now. In the world of healthcare, the debate is already settled. Hospital risk management departments, state licensing boards, and the people writing the TEAS and HESI exams are radical prescriptivists.
They don't care about the descriptivist argument.
Not at all. They do not view the apostrophe as an arbitrary historical accident. They view it as an incredibly efficient, easy-to-grade test of precision for safe clinical practice. If you can't be bothered to place an apostrophe in the correct spot, they assume you might not bother to double-check a medication dosage.
It's a test of your professional vigilance. So, if you're heading into your exam soon, let's crystallize this mindset with a rapid-fire summary. You don't need a flashcard for every single word. You just need to internalize the logic we've discussed today. Number one owner, the apostrophe goes before the S. Multiple owners, it goes after the S.
Number 2, master the its versus its rules. Its, with an apostrophe, is always a contraction for it is or it has.
Number 3, irregular plurals, like children or women, act singular. Add the apostrophes.
Number 4, possessive pronouns, his, hers, ours, theirs. It's never take apostrophes. They are apostrophe-free zones.
And finally, number 5, apostrophes never just mean more than one. Don't fall for the greengrocer's apostrophe. You have the tools now. You know where the traps are hidden, and you understand why the exam writers care so much. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.
It's been a journey.
We've traced this tiny mark from 16th century Italian printing presses all the way to modern malpractice lawsuits. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you hit the books. We know that language is a living, breathing thing, right? And English speakers managed perfectly fine without standardized punctuation for centuries. Given that local councils are already dropping them from street signs, will future generations look back at our strict obsession with the apostrophe as just a quirky, temporary 400-year phase of the English language? Or will the demand for absolute precision keep it alive forever? Something to think about. Until next time.